Hello and welcome to episode 57 of JagaVision. We've been doing this now 57 weeks. Pretty exciting times. I feel like that every time that we start up. I'm like, wow, I can't believe it's another week that we've managed. Feels like there's a billion things going on, and to be able to have this continuity is it feels pretty good. Looks like you can actually hear me today as well. I know last time for the entire introduction it was in mute, so learning a little bit more every session. And for those of you watching that don't know, I'm Jared Nyberg. I am a co-owner of JagaSilk here in Victoria, BC. You can check us out online at jagasilk.com. Last week we had some good times over with the folks over at Ratio in Vernon, making some ice drinks. We were doing a hot concentrate with some CTC. I really encourage you to go and check out that episode. This week we're going to have Steve Chmilar join us from Steve Chmilar's Painted World. He also does some music work with me on my band Truth and Dolphin, which is always tons of fun. We were actually just out recording a live music video that I'm super excited about. We got into some great conversations about the relationship between visual art and flavor. That we're really excited to discuss today. Sister Speak should be joining us as well. She's recording her third studio album right now in California. She'll be joining us from across the border there a little bit later in the show, so that should be fun as well. The guests should be joining us roughly around 1:15. Before my guests join me, I always like to have a quick tea. Today, and it's always a tea that I've never had before, so is the idea anyway. And today, that tea happens to be a pu'er. So I've had. So this particular pu'er is quite young. Normally, I like to drink pu'ers when they're at least 10 years old. That gives you a better sense of what they have to say. Pu'er, I always tell folks, aren't necessarily ideal to enjoy before you've let them age a bit. This particular pu'er hasn't been packed into cakes, and I'm going to do a good healthy dose of 4 grams. This teapot can hold 90 mils of water filled to the top. So just going to go with like really standard brewing procedure for a pu'er. It being broken up like this, I feel like I'm going to get some pretty interesting flavors right off the bat. But we want to make sure we do a little bit of a rinse here. Give it a smell. Should probably be showing you guys these leaves too. Really small. Look kind of like for some reason I'm always reminded of chaga mushrooms when I drink pu'er. I don't know if you have ever had chaga mushroom tea, but there's this sort of foresty, mossy, mushroomy quality to chaga and pu'er. They share that. Something also really interesting about this genre of tea, I shouldn't call it a genre, this appellation, is that it seems to bind to carbon dioxide when we're fermenting using kombucha, and it makes for a really interesting texture to the foam. So yeah, little tiny leaves, really unusual. So they called it palace grade. The people this is a new relationship. It's from a farm in Yunnan, and we've been talking to them. They're a little bit of a bigger farm. I like to deal with small operations. These guys, though, have an export license, which is kind of interesting. In China, it can be really challenging for tea farms to get one of those nifty things from the government. There's a lot of restrictions, etc., in the country. So to be able to deal with somebody where the paperwork isn't a challenge is really nice. Lots of red tape, but they seem to know what they're doing. So always a benefit. And you know, they're from the region where pu'er needs to be from. So those of you watching that don't know, pu'er is kind of like the equivalent to, in the wine world, it's like champagne is to sparkling wine. Dark tea, or what should be called black tea, and it is called black tea at origin, but we would have to call it dark tea, is a fermented tea. And if it's not from Southern Nanuo in Yunnan. It's not technically pu'er. So I'm going to give that a go. Very brackish. Very brackish. Very dark. Really interesting. Smells really good. It tastes really lovely. That's a very smooth, very beautiful tea. Yeah, I'm into that. So this is very syrupy, very rich, very easy drinking. That is, I think, when I go to drink a pu'er, when I can have it taste this nice, that can't be young. That cannot be a 2021. I think what this farmer has done is they've sent me a selection that has been aged appropriately and just not put it on the package of the samples. That tastes like a very nicely aged tea. I could be wrong. They might have just like very wonderfully managed the process of a ripe pu'er, and they might have ripened it with such skill that it's just fooling me. And I'm not necessarily a pu'er specialist. I encourage you to watch an episode that we did here on Yixing teapots with the fellow who I bought this teapot from, actually. His name's Daniel. He owns the Chinese tea shop. It's called the Chinese Tea Shop in Vancouver. I've gone in there numerous times and sat down with the owner and we've talked for hours, and he's made me 3 or 4 different teas and just talks about the idiosyncrasies of pu'ers, and fascinating dialogue. So yeah. That, I believe, is going to be a tea that we're going to bring in. Here's how that's feeling. And it looks like, let me see, we have folks in the chat room, which is cool. If you're watching, hello. You can always join us from Facebook. You can be joining us from Twitch. You can be joining us from YouTube. Lots of different opportunities to hang out and ask questions and all that stuff. So hello to the folks who are participating in the chat. The second steep is something I think I want to quickly make here. My guests are going to be on in moments, so I want to get another taste of that. You can tell a lot about a tea, especially say like your rock oolongs, or you like most oolongs really, and then your dark teas like this, or true black teas, from the second, third, fourth infusions. If you're just not getting much flavor on consecutive infusions, that there's an issue where there's just too much going on, too much focus on that first infusion, and it's generally considered a lower quality beverage when you're just not getting much out of it that second, third, fourth, fifth time around. I'm seeing some pretty intense color though. Like, look at that. Yeah, really, really, really beautiful. Very brackish, very syrupy. This is a lovely tea. Yeah. Helps when you're brewing. This is again what we were learning from the Chinese tea shop is, you see how this teapot is a little bit porous? That helps with your earthy teas. If you want to get a teapot that's a little bit more dense, like say this guy here, that's going to be nicer for, say, if you're making yourself a floral oolong. But for an earthy tea like this, or like a crimson tea, or what we call black tea in North America, they're more earthy. You could probably choose a teapot that's gonna enhance those flavor dynamics. Beautiful. Okay, let's see if our guests are around. Steve, I think he's actually on the line. Are you there, Steve? Let's see if we can't get Steve Chmilar on the line here. I think. Oh, there he is.
Hello.
Oh, we can hear the show in the background.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. Hello.
I canceled it.
Hello, Steve. Welcome.
Hey.
Awesome. So great to have you on the show. Yeah, I thought we were going to start with jumping jacks. That was the plan. That was the plan. So for those of you watching, Steve is calm all the time. He's he's no, Steve Chmilar. Actually, Steve, you want to actually tell our audience a little bit about who you are and what you do for a living?
I am running for Vice Deputy of Canada next week.
Yeah, you are. Yeah.
Just kidding.
Yeah. No.
I have made the mistake of becoming a full-time artist. And
Amen.
I wouldn't recommend it to anyone.
A mistake. That's awesome.
Just kidding.
Just kidding. SteveChmilar.com. Those watching right now, go there. On the top page is just this gorgeous painting that you did. I think when you also Steve also lives in Victoria, and had a chance to go out and see this painting before it left his space, and the detail, the lighting, the use of color, like, oh man, epic, beautiful. And I know that's just one of many that you put together. What is your art form? Like, it's realism, I think, is the word that I've heard you say to describe it. But
yeah, terminology in art is always one of the trickiest things.
Okay, so like from a professor's point of view, how would they judge your work? Like, what would they categorize it as, and what is your feelings on like, how would you describe what you do?
A present-day professor at an art institution actually probably wouldn't like it, so they would just categorize it all as kitsch.
Right. Okay. Nice.
But someone that does like it might say it's related to surrealism. There's terms like new contemporary is a popular term that sort of tries to encompass all of the representational painting that is what I would say creative. And another term could be conceptual realism, narrative realism, magic realism, which I don't personally like. I just don't like the connotations with that. But anything to do with conceptual realism or new contemporary painting, thought-provoking, art for the mind, not so much for the wall.
Art for the mind, not for the wall. I'm into that. That's cool. Okay.
Yeah.
So when you like, when I look at it, I see something very, very, surreal, I guess, but fantastic. There's like an element of like fantasy or story, or it's just very, I guess also what keeps blowing my mind is the detail. I'm gonna actually put it up on the show here, just the one that's on your top page here.
Okay.
And just give me a sec. Let's see if I can't. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. I'm gonna make this happen. Okay.
Yeah, I leveled up from detail, and I'm now working on E-tail.
E-tail.
Which is the next, and then I'll eventually hopefully get to F-tail.
F-tail. Amazing. Okay. It's trying to do this. Where? Why isn't it showing it? Show everyone. Show Steve Chmilar. Show the presentation. That's what I want to pin. Okay. Okay, I think I got it. Yes. We are viewing it live. This is your painting that I was seeing up, and this is like a pretty big scale painting, right? Like, this was like
yeah.
And I just
44 by 55 inches, so not the biggest, but pretty big for this style, because I'm still working every last bit of it in the end. Like, every final square millimeter is finished with a very small brush.
Okay.
After numerous layers, so that's the crazy part about it. It's just how much time it takes. I think it's much longer than anyone would ever guess.
How long did this particular how long did this particular painting take you to complete?
At least a few months.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, and that's actually a funny thing too. It's not necessarily regarded as a like a benefit for an artist's resume or for their stat sheet to have to say that paintings take a really long time, depending on what side of the art world you're coming from.
Okay.
So it's kind of regarded as better if it's possible to do it extremely quick.
Interesting.
But There's weird things that happen with that, because then that goes into the idea of labor and art and what makes things valuable and not.
Right. Well, that's interesting because I feel like I hear about that in carpentry as well. Like like you look at say chairs that were made in like the 1800s or something, and you see all of the work that goes into the ornamentation in the legs, or in the backrest, and then you look at the chairs that come out now, and it almost seems like there's a devolution, like we've actually gone backwards in our thirst for commodification and scaling up, and commodification, making things cheap makes them fast, and there's a loss of detail, a loss of ornamentation, a loss of almost like this really I don't know, it's hard
everything meaningful.
Yeah, like and it feels
de-skilling is a really important term that I think should be on the tip of everyone's tongue.
A de-skilling, yeah. So it's yeah. I think actually that is exactly it. There's like a de-skilling of in a variety of different genres of work, like not just in carpentry, but yeah, in painting. There seems to be, I mean, you can even have it as simple as tradespeople. There's just this, I think that this idea of, capitalism, sometimes people misunderstand it. They think that capitalism is just, money and its interaction with society. But what it is it's actually the commodification of time, right? So when we commodify time, and if we're selling our time and we build that into the equation of what it is that we're putting out into the world, then the more time we spend on something for a lower price, we're not able to really, benefit from it. I guess we're not able to like move forward and pay our rent and pay our bills and all this stuff. And I guess maybe the reason why people were able to do like amazing pieces of art, etc., or these carvings, is there was more of like a patron-like relationship. If you were like, I don't know, designing a suit of armor, for example, for a king way back in the day, and you wanted those like the chainmail. I remember watching a documentary just like this, just the incredible amount of time that goes into making chainmail, and like to get an entire suit made out of it is just this super laborious process that you could only make possible if you were like a retainer, or you were that project was being paid for by a king or something like that, so it's interesting because that's before capitalism, really, right? As we think of it now, of this commodification of time, it was more like, I am an artisan and I'm gonna, yeah, it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. I probably have some controversial thoughts about that. I think because in a way, I think I'm definitely not a historian or an expert on any of this stuff, but I think what we currently know as the way that our market works kind of goes back to England around the 14th century.
Mm-hmm.
But all of that amazing stuff existed a long time ago because of the wealthiest people, which is a very hard thing to swallow, I think. When we look back at all of the like Botticelli and Titian and these painters that were creating incredible work a long time ago, none of that stuff would exist now. And so, I mean, that's a really tough one, because I've even heard like a 14-year-old at the grocery store say something about capitalism, and I think it's especially, I'm not sure if it's just on Vancouver Island, but it's really common for the human mind to want to find the problem. And so if we have a simplified version of what the problem is, like being able to just nail it down with one term, I think it's very easy for people to say, okay, this is the problem, or that person is the problem, like to ascribe agency to someone or something,
right,
and nail that one thing down as the buzzword that everybody uses. But I think that's definitely surface. I think it goes it goes a lot deeper than that.
Mm.
And it's an exciting time for us to examine what exactly that is, that it goes a lot deeper than.
Right.
And I'm coming from, just like from my own personal history, I'm coming from a place of feeling very, very angsty, sort of like anti-status quo against the system for a long time now. Dreaming about a world that's post-monetary, Jacques Fresco and the Venus Project, and a resource-based economy where everything is shared and whatnot. But so that's a really interesting long conversation.
You kind of are bringing it like, and I welcome Sherri Ann. Sister Speaks joined us in the middle of that sentence. So welcome to the show. Awesome to have you. Sherri Ann, you know Steve. Steve, you know Sherri Ann. But for those of our viewers, or do you really know each other? And
do we really?
There you go.
We should a little bit by now.
Yeah, there you go. So Sherri Ann is the lead singer of Sister Speak. For those of you who are watching weekly, you'll know that she joins us weekly. She's currently, though, recording her third studio album. Really excited for her. Some awesome stuff. Sherri Ann, we were just talking about art and the ability to take time to complete detailed sort of pieces of work, and it's really, in my opinion, I think that I was explaining how like capitalism is really the commodification of time, and then we need to, as we're selling our time, the values that we receive for it, if we work faster and create stuff that's cheaper and we sell more of them, then oftentimes we can, for lower quality work, do a lot better as a merchant, right? But I was just kind of relating that to the incredible detail that Steve puts into his paintings, like 3, 4, 5 months at a time. He's just focused on one painting, and how that can be really hard for some painters, most painters really, to make work as a career when they're spending that amount of time on that amount of detail. Steve, there's a potter in Korea that he makes matcha bowls, and he only keeps 2 or 3 of his bowls per year, and he makes bowls every day, and then he breaks them. And the one that he's like super happy with, and this is a full-on process. He might be happy with it, how it comes off of the wheel and how it comes out of the drying process, and then he puts it, he glazes it, and how it comes out of the kiln. There's going to be these different stages, but if it's not exactly what he's looking for, then he breaks it. He doesn't want to. He knows that it's just like seconds to throw a bowl, but it's a lifetime to create this piece of art, and so he's able to just kind of like limit it to 3 bowls that he does ish. I don't know why he does that, but it's helped to bring, I guess, a sense of value to what he's doing for himself and for those that are really interested in his work. Interesting way of interacting with this, if you ask me.
That would be like a real way to implement some kind of scarcity. That's for sure. And like 2 bowls versus 365 bowls.
Right? You could just paint your in one day and just tear them up.
Oh God.
He's so
and
sad.
Just keep the 2.
Yeah.
See, that's actually a funny thing, because that is an approach to. There are approaches to that with art where, people make a lot of work, and then they have a lot to choose from when a show is coming up. So they might choose 10 or 15 or 20 out of 100 or who knows what. And so the idea is that I think they're capturing some of the subconscious, this stuff that we can't control. And because it's a unhinged subconscious, we don't know if it's going to turn out. So if 80% of it doesn't turn out, then it's kind of okay, because we've only put so much time into it. If you put 2 hours into something and it doesn't turn out, not the biggest deal. It's like watching a movie that's terrible. It's like, it's not the end of your life, right? It's like 2 hours are lost forever. But spending 3 or 4 months on a painting that doesn't work out is not it's not possible. It just is not, So
have you ever stopped midway, like been doing a painting and you're like, this is just not working for me, and I'm like a month in, or maybe less than that? Like, is there a moment where you're like,
No, I have to make sure it's going to work, and I do that in the preliminary process,
right,
in the design process.
And
that's when I know I feel solid about the idea. Yeah.
Okay. Sherri, you might have something to say about this topic. Hey, like, you were just recording. You're doing these 12-hour days. You're like, albums seem to be like a moment, like a capture of like a whole bunch of work. Like, you know, people think that most of the work is in the studio. Oh, I spent like 7 days, 12 hours, and I recorded an album. But I know for a fact you've been working on these songs, many of them for years and years and years, and just tweaking them and getting them to a place where you can then capture them, etc. Do you want to speak to this subject a little bit?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's very much. Yeah, you don't see all the preparation work, like in order to even do the album. You know, it'd take like a whole month off basically from everything else except organizing life a little bit.
Yeah.
Moving outside. With the chimes. But yeah, it's interesting just balancing everything. There's so many pieces to it, you know, writing the songs, working on the song, polishing them up, and then getting other ears on them, jamming them freely in like ridiculous jams at Steve's house. And then there's the piece of like going over them with the band, and then band parts and how to get the emotion out, like the back, like the production to match the emotion of the song, and the feeling of the song is like a whole thing. And then to keep yourself healthy while doing it, when you finally get to the recording process, and like raising funds to even do it in the first place, like, you know.
Yeah, it's a process. It's a sounds like a fairly full scale, very very long process too, with a lot of detail. And you know, if we bring it to tea, you know, like when we actually do we do sort of a curated approach. And I find that a lot of farmers guys, they're kind of like the craftspeople that we buy from. And they're the ones who put in years and years and years and years of study and effort and trying to understand the idiosyncrasies of the land that they're farming. And then their tea that they make that year is almost like a photograph of where they are in their craft. And they often take a very more like rootsy sort of perspective on the whole thing, in that they are not really saying, oh, I am an artist with my tea. It can definitely be that way, where they can be like taking, like, we have one of the farmers we work with, his name is Mr. Yamaguchi, and he's definitely, I think, has a certain amount of awareness of this idea of being a craftsperson, and he's really trying to bring that approach to it. But many of them that we work with, they're just like, oh yeah, you know, like, I'm doing what my father did and his father did and his father, you know, it's kind of like goes back like sometimes 8-9 generations. But just the amount of like care and it's almost like they don't even realize what they're doing. But like the amount of care that they're doing, it's just been so normal for them to do this for so long. And then the teas that we get in from these relationships are moments in that multi-generational process. It's quite interesting. And then, you know, there is definitely a you know, if we're talking again about the pressures from sort of automation and scaling up and all of that stuff, there's a lot of farms getting abandoned, a lot of this carefulness being abandoned at the interest of creating a lot of tea for a cheap amount. And you start to lose a lot of this brilliant attention to detail that's been passed down from generation to generation, and it's really, really sad to see. So a huge part for us at JagaSilk is definitely to take that moment and try to talk about it a little bit more. And I constantly, whenever I'm talking to musical artists, whenever I'm talking to visual artists, whenever I'm talking to people in the coffee industry or in food, I'm constantly seeing these associations, these parallels that seem to appear between the different genres of sound and taste and visual. In this particular, one of the reasons why I brought Steve on the show this week, Steve, was when you made we were doing a music practice for Tooth and Dolphin, and you made me a cranberry sparkling water, and you were really, really, really focused on getting like this perfect shade of pink. And I thought that was so awesome. Like, I know that there are
That sounds about right.
there are these people in the cocktail world that really focus a lot on the color of the drink. And there are people I know, when I'm talking to Fujioka, one of the farmers that we're working with, he gets a little bit of heat from his customers in Tokyo when he's at a department store in Tokyo, when his tea doesn't have the right shade of green that's supposed to represent like an ideal sort of look for it. And it's nothing to do with the flavor. It really isn't. Like that I shouldn't say nothing. When it's like super murky, it's generally going to be a little bit stronger. Sure. But they're just kind of looking for like a tone. And it's really interesting how like the tone of the liquid seems to have like there's like an association with how that's going to taste. And then and then you were talking a little bit about like pure, like for when you're painting light into your paintings, and like we were talking about different brands, not brands, but different types of paint and ones that are quick drying. You went into like this conversation about like this quick drying yellow or something that's like $80 for a little tiny jar, and I was just like, this is crazy. But it was just, you were talking about also though with light, like getting these pure colors, but if you use too many of them, then it becomes kind of bland. So like really extreme colors are something that you want to use just a little bit of, and then they help you to sort of bring texture to light, and different like shades of white. I remember just going down this rabbit hole. It was
oh yeah.
It was really, really fascinating. I was
just grabbing this. This is the $80 tube.
It is. Okay, let's hear about this $80 tube of yellow. What does it do? Why would I pay $80 for that as a painter?
Because it is a fast drying yellow. It's the fastest one that I have.
Uh-huh.
And
in context, what does that mean? What is normal for days to dry or hours to dry? And what is this?
Oil paint generally dries in anywhere from 24 hours to 2 weeks.
Okay.
And this will dry in 24 hours. Most of the other yellows, like for example, ochre, will take a little bit longer, 2 maybe 3 days, and it is also not quite as light. Ochre has it's a lower value color, meaning that it's darker. So ochre has a little bit more presence of brownish, greenish to it. So it's not as brilliant and light value, which is for underpainting. I want to have all primaries and secondary colors that are fast drying, so that I can go any direction and do everything fast drying, and then I paint over that. So the underpainting layers have to dry fast, dry quickly. That's one of the main rules of oil painting. It's called fat over lean, which means that the paint that goes over top of the layer has to be fatter, containing more oil, drying slower than the paint that's already on there.
Oh, fascinating.
And that's only something that painters that work in layers have to consider.
Makes sense. It makes sense. It's bringing sort of structure to that visual form, but it's also, there's a very technically practical part of it, which is I need my base to dry fast so that I can continue working on top of it. Yeah, again.
That being said, this paint is going to last me probably 5, 10, 15, 20 years for all I know.
Oh wow.
So it's well worth the money. Whereas, if you're a painter that's doing really large abstract pieces that have what's called impasto brushwork, where it's maybe very, very, very thick paint.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could go through a tube this size in one painting. And so that's a totally different story. Whereas I work very thin.
Mm. So
I don't use a lot of paint. It's just time.
Interesting. Huh. Wow. That is actually fascinating. So this tea that we're about to make, Steve, when I'm trying to decide on an oolong, the color actually does play a role for me. When I'm cupping, we cup hundreds of teas, and then we choose 6 teas for our sort of like our cafe standards. They're the ones that go out into the world as part of our sort of contracted out support for different wholesale clients. And JagaSilk is predominantly a wholesale company. It makes up more than 90% of our revenue is just our relationship with our cafes. So it's really important to us that we get those sort of the dynamics of that relationship really done up well, yeah, exactly. That's the tin right there. And
Ooh.
and so, you know, when we started this business, we were all like, you know, we were all just super focused on matcha. We didn't have oolongs, and one of the reasons is I just didn't feel comfortable working in a genre that I didn't really understand. And so it's not that I now understand oolongs. I'm not going to say that, but I feel like I have more of an introduction. I have a better idea of what I think tastes good, what I'm happier with, a little better idea of what is good leaf quality and what is not so good leaf quality. You know, I look at these leaves. I don't know if you have that jar before we extract it, but
so this is kind of like an unboxing video.
A little bit, yeah. So
yeah, because I got this in the mail. I got this yesterday from the Super Express courier.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, hey, what's going on? So this is my introduction. Also, your instruction for me to make this is going to be useful.
Yeah.
Because I am an extreme novice.
Well,
I am to tea as a person from the 17th century is to the internet.
Awesome. Okay. So, so what why I thought
Whoa.
of yeah.
Whoa, it's already made.
So what happens is, I was talking to Steve and he was saying, you know, like I'm more than happy to do the show, but I'd like to be painting and on the show at the same time. You know, he's stacking functions. This is multitasking. We haven't gotten to that point yet where he's and maybe he has. Maybe he's quietly painting in the background. But one of the things that came to mind was this cold brew iced tea. And most people, when they think cold brew iced tea, they think I have to drink it cold, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now you don't have to do that. So this is gonna be great. And I'll explain in just a moment. So to make this, you gotta have 40 grams of tea. And one of the JagaSilk pouches, if you open up that tin, I gave you one of the pouches too, so you can make it hot at a later date. Inside of there's a pouch. You could do, if you wanted to make it exactly like this, you would just take a 1 liter mason jar, and Sherri, you've done this a million times as well, and you put 40 grams into it, and you would just fill it up with 850 grams of cold water. I've already done that process for you, so you don't need to do that today. But you want to leave it in the fridge for a minimum of 24 hours. So rather than doing like hanging out on this podcast for 24 hours, I decided it was probably a good idea to do that in advance for you there. So
cool, thank you.
No worries. So when it's done brewing, you want to put this nice maybe ochre. We're gonna add ochre to our tea.
Cobalt yellow.
Cobalt yellow.
Yellow.
And you're gonna take it and you're gonna put this lid on top. It's one of our mason jar brewers.
Okay, so I've already got the lid on top.
Yeah, and this is often something we use for our 500 milliliter jars, but for this process, I like to screw it onto a 1 liter jar. You can do a 2 liter. You can scale up or down, however you want to go. But 40 grams.
Oh, do you have the little sieve?
Yeah, and then it's on the lid like that, and it just pours through. And this is a great way to use the mason jar brewer lid.
Oh yeah. Okay, now I got. Oh, this is really unboxing because this is actually
Oh,
still
whoa.
in the box.
Yeah.
You got spoiled.
You'll like the philosophical quote on the side there, Steve.
Why we use this brewer?
No.
Stands up to rigorous. I drink, therefore I brew.
There you go. So that.
But I must share one thing with you all.
What's up?
Y'all.
What's up, y'all?
I brewed the cinnamon fireweed, not knowing you were gonna do cold brew. I brewed it for 24 hours.
You're amazing. That is so cool. So Sherri is working with a spearmint, fireweed, and cinnamon. Spearmint and fireweed are from a farm in northern Alberta, and the cinnamon is from an organic farm in Sri Lanka that we buy our spices
Northern
from.
Alberta.
Yeah, north of Edmonton.
And I'm really cool how you got this forearm bracelet.
Yeah, that's totally what it's for. You know, normally folks like to put it around the 500 milliliter mason jar so that it doesn't burn their hands. But the real reason why we invented those was as a forearm bracelet.
So, is it to help strengthen your arms while you're pouring tea?
That's it. That's it right there. It's adding to the coolness. Yeah.
You're supposed to have like 10-pound weights with the wrist bracelet.
That's right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So you just.
While you're making the tea and painting simultaneously.
Yeah, I'm also bench pressing right now as we speak too.
Yeah, you are. You're painting as well with your feet. Okay.
Yeah.
This is a very
No, it's with his other ear he's painting.
Steve, you'll have to check him out on Steve's Painted World. He paints 16 paintings at the same time. One of them he paints with his teeth. It's amazing. Okay. So.
Okay, so I've got this
lid
screwed on the top.
Okay, so you're gonna actually take that off and screw it. Okay. You're gonna put it onto the jar that's filled with tea.
Oh, okay.
You following me?
All right.
Okay.
Yes.
And then I asked for you to.
I'm unscrewing this.
Yeah, you have. Okay, awesome. Putting on
I'm trying to put it on camera here.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Ooh.
Yeah, and it should smell amazing.
Ooh.
Now, when you can smell your tea, it's volatiles escaping into the air. So liking to lid them as soon as we can. So we can, and that's one of the reasons we brew cold. If you brew hot, your tea oils will often oxidize in about 15 minutes. So you don't get that beautiful expression of flavor when you do a hot steep and keep it for a long time. It's really great when you're drinking it right away. But if you brew hot and then you chill it, you're gonna lose, because it smells so good because those flavor molecules are escaping, right?
Yes.
I will say though, this fireweed cinnamon is like off the charts. I brewed it actually hot and then cooled it one time, and then I did it cold, and they both taste like outrageously good.
You know, a little bit more likely to be tasting good with our tisanes, but less likely with our, say, like our green teas. They'll get very kind of like an old hay oxidized flavor pretty fast if we're not careful. It also releases a lot more tannin, so there's going to also be an adjustment that you would need to make, because we've made a concentrate, so you'd kind of mess around with it and see what tastes good. But
so should I pour this into here?
You want to pour? You know what? It's not going to fit. Do you have a 1 liter jar? That was one of the prep questions.
I've got this one.
That's amazing.
Both same size.
That's what we want. Yeah. So I want you to strain into that big jar there. Yeah.
Okay. So just go like this.
Empty it all. Yeah. Bam. And so
you hear that?
That's, you're urinating right now. So what this is.
Ooh, it's golden green.
So what we do is we like to make a concentrate for cafes, because this allows them to have some pretty quick service. And how we achieve that quick service is by cutting the cold brew with hot water. So you can actually, and you were boiling some water, right, man?
Yes.
And Sherri-Ann, you know this process. I think we've gone over it before, right? Which is you make a really strong concentrate and you just cut it with hot water for instant hot tea. Or is this new for you? Sherri-Ann?
She was out.
Oh, me? I'm right here. Sorry, I cut out for a sec.
No worries.
What was the question?
The question is, have you made that cold brew and then cut it with hot water?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
I'm doing that right now.
Awesome. Cool. And
I just finished it, so I'm boiling water. That's why I had to cut out for a second.
Yeah, makes sense. You know, we were dealing with we actually are we sponsor Sister Speak with tea for those tours and for traveling the world and all that fun stuff. But another thing that we do is we sponsor Desert Bus. Desert Bus is this amazing charity that raises hundreds of thousands of dollars for children in hospitals, and they play the world's worst video game and tap into the philanthropists that are out there amongst gamers. And they have quite a community they built up over the last 12, 13 years. And they're based in Victoria, and they've raised millions of dollars now. They were expecting to maybe raise like tens of thousands, maybe, with all the effort they were putting in. They were like, that was their like super high hope, and they've just surpassed it on so many levels. But yeah, you'll have to look up Desert Bus for Hope. But we are their tea sponsor. And so what we do is we make a bunch of cold brew like this, and we just give it to them. And the idea behind the game, or what they're doing there, is they are playing the world's worst video game.
It's like you push one button for the like hours.
What it is you're driving a bus across the Nevada desert in real time, and in very bad graphics, and the bus pulls slightly to the left, so you have to tap to the right a little bit as you're driving. And if you get there and back again, you get 1 point. Okay.
Oh my god.
And if you crash, you start again from the beginning.
Oh no.
And so they play this, and the people watching donate to keep them playing. And the cost of keeping them playing exponentially increases over time. And they do like kind of, they have people sitting on like, it's like a couch, and it's a set now, but it started in somebody's basement, kind of like a Wayne's World sort of idea. And they're just playing, and they pass around the controller, and there's different teams, etc. And there's anyway, they have a lot of fun, and they're really funny. And they have guests on while they're playing doing the bus. I go on actually as a regular guest every year and make matcha for them and talk about it and that kind of idea. But anyway, long story short is there are tons of volunteers and people. They go and they need a quick tea. They're 24 hours, 36 hours sometimes, and they don't have time to like do the care that we would want to in making it at the moment. But you can put that level of care in advance, kind of like you're pre-planning for your painting. This is like pre-planning for your day. You can make like this by the bucket if you want to, and then you put 1/4 in a measuring cup, so 1/4 cup, and you would then fill it to 240, so like 3/4 cup of hot water.
Okay, so should I be doing this?
You should. So get your measuring cup and pour.
I don't have one. Oh, actually, wait a minute. This is the one. Okay, this is the one that you sent.
Yeah, you know what? That jar has it on it for sure. So you can totally use that. So there should be a 1/4 cup or a 2-ounce line or a 60 milliliter line on the jar.
Yep, there's a 2-ounce line.
Yeah, and so you want to put the concentrate in there to the 2-ounce line.
Okay, and that's this stuff. This is the concentrate.
Yeah.
Okay, 2-ounce line. Here it goes.
And then
Concentrating.
concentrating on the concentrate. And then you want to do a
little bit more. I'll just take some out.
Okay.
Okay.
Perfect. And then you want to top that up to the 8-ounce line or the 1 cup line with hot water.
Okay. 8 ounce or the 1 cup. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I left it in your fridge. I left the concentrate in the fridge. Remember when Ingrid was in town last summer? There's always like concentrates chilling in the fridge. And then just added hot water to it in the morning.
And for those watching, another amazing artist would be Ingrid. You gotta check out Snafu and the wonderful work that she does.
So now I have this up to the 1 cup mark. Exactly.
Beautiful. And now you could drink right out of there because but I like to make it in like a decanter like this and then pour it. You could make it into a cup. If you know how big your cup is, like if you can fill it up to the 8-ounce line and pour it in. Isn't that good? Yeah, there he is. Oh, Steve.
Well, it's that good. You know it's that good when he starts falling over and
Yeah.
As soon as you can see the roof of his mouth, that's when you know it's really like
we into it? We into it? Okay. Yeah. We if we
kind of want to drink, I want to drink like 2 liters of it right now. Just like down the hatch.
So if do you have like another cup you can randomly empty that into?
Empty this one into?
Yeah, because I want you to do a cold version now. So you can do like.
Okay, I'll go get one.
Okay, and you can even get a cold. Why don't you go get a cold cup? Do you have a measuring cup anywhere? Are you able to grab one? Okay, why don't you grab a measuring cup and then a cold cup that you would drink out of? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put 2 ounces of the concentrate in, and we're gonna fill it up to the 1 cup mark with cold water instead. And I want you to taste both sides.
I'll be back in 45 seconds, give or take 10,000 seconds.
Okay, awesome. All right. So
10,000.
10,000.
9,999. I'm just kidding.
Do you want to? So you're Sherri, you're doing an the spearmint, fireweed, and cinnamon. You've tried it both ways too. I imagine it's quite hot where you are right now. Are you?
It's actually not as hot as there oddly today.
Really? Okay. Yeah, we're sitting.
It was like
22 degrees over here. 25.
I thought it was like 28 in Vancouver, so maybe it's cooler in Victoria.
You know what? I'm thinking yesterday. Yeah. Word is that up in the Okanagan, it's like
30. I'm so sorry. I have to run because we gotta this mad storage space deadline. I'm just like, I just am dying to see the expressions again. Like the next. Oh, I have to go though. I'm so sorry.
Hey, it happens. Yeah, we hit. I know we have you.
How's the album going?
Oh, it's been so fun. Okay, I gotta say though, with the tea, like I don't think it would have even been possible without it. I made cold brew, Singer's Delight.
Yeah.
JagaSilk Singer's Delight every night before the vocal sessions.
Amazing. Okay.
And then I was just doing cold brew, and then I added hot water to it for 12 hours straight. I just drank it all day.
Wow. Okay.
And then right at the end of the day, like around 10 p.m., we went from 12 p.m. to 12 a.m. doing vocals with only like 5-minute breaks in between songs. It was crazy.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
And the marshmallow room. Yeah, I think it came out. I mean, we'll see. I think it's really coming together. I think it's so fun. So yeah, but the tea, like, it hydrated me, and then I felt like it was like cleansing. I don't know. Like, I felt amazing after that because I drank marshmallow all day, and then I had the matcha at night, even though it was at night. But like, I had to do like full voice songs right at the very end. But I didn't want to blow my voice in the beginning.
Right.
So I saved the matcha till the end because there's a little caffeine in it.
Yeah.
Oh, this is good.
Is that good?
Ooh.
Are we drinking the cold version now? Did we just this is for our audience. I'm going in on this.
No, this is the same thing. I'm drinking the hot stuff.
Okay. Drinking the hot stuff. Look at that color difference.
Okay. So now I've got a couple different measuring cups just in case. And I've also got this novelty.
Nice,
joke.
nice.
Have you known your mom?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
It's a stupid joke.
No, it's great. It's good. You know, I can think of situations where that, you know. So those watching, if you want to go and find Sherri Ann, you can go to sisterspeakmusic.com. Sister Speak, amazing musical project, world, blues, reggae, folk rock, indie. She's got such an incredible sort of myriad of sounds that she's putting out into the world. Wonderful lyrics. Patreon.com/sisterspeak if you want to go and support her there. And her shows every Thursday you can catch live at 12 o'clock. I believe you do those generally on your Patreon for sure, but you also sometimes go on Facebook, Instagram, all that fun stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It looks like Steve has a puppet.
Okay. Okay.
This also doubles as a fist cover.
That's right.
Oh, interesting. Yes, all those things are true. All of things that you both
Oh,
mentioned.
those hats. I need one of those hats.
I will say that this is I don't have a Your Mom cup.
Yeah.
I love my mom. But I do have a really intense hat here, and we actually found like 10 of them in the storage space here. At first, there was only one hanging in the corner, and it was like, who's it gonna be for? So we're gonna be bringing these back to Canada.
I've requested. Those watching, that hat is actually you can buy from Blockstar. They do a field hockey product that just rocks. It allows you to set up and play field hockey really with like the goals that they put together allows you have that flexibility. Seen some videos of Blockstar taking that to their system to Latin America and playing some games with the locals and goes all around North America doing goaltender training and all that fun stuff, and really fashionable hats, which we're excited about.
They're pretty fun. I mean,
yeah, it works. But thank you for coming on the show, Sister Speak. As always, a huge appreciation. Best of luck with your album, and
thank you.
And I hope you enjoy the tea and continue to enjoy it.
Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, I'm gonna try out the cold one too here. So
Okay.
This is
I gotta learn how to do the cold one.
You gotta do okay. So you're gonna do it's the same system except you're using cold water instead of hot water. So you're gonna do a 1/4 cup in the measuring cup of the concentrate, and then 3/4 of cold water. So you always want to
finish this off first, actually.
Okay, sure. And then you could just make it in the same cup.
It's so good. I just want to finish it right now.
So what you could do if you're kind of like in this place where you want to do kind of a thermos system because you're painting, you could also make this in a camel pack so that you don't actually have to go to the kitchen when you're painting. You know, just straw it in. You've seen them do it, the marathon runners. And you can put 25% concentrate, 75% tea, and you can make cold or hot. It gives you that flexibility to go back and forth.
So right now I just poured this original concentrate.
Yeah.
Into here.
To the.
Is that all I do? Is just drink it like this?
It's the one you put 1/4 cup. 2 ounces.
I put. Yeah, 2 ounces.
Okay, now I want you to fill it to 8 ounces with cold water this time.
Oh, okay. I have to go get cold water then.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay, I'll be right back.
No worries. Okay, cool. So, we are. We're going to explore. I think the difference is that come out of a cold water extraction versus a hot water extraction, and it's kind of a relationship thing with dilution. So, Steve. What's interesting here is that it's the same concentrate, okay? But if you give, I want to hold this up to the camera. I think it's so interesting just the differences in color. Can you see that okay? We were talking a lot about color. So this is the warm one. You see a little bit more murkiness. I've noticed that when I make a hot concentrate, generally, it gets cloudy, kind of like and if you refrigerate it, it gets really cloudy, almost like you've refrigerated olive oil. You know how olive oil gets really cloudy when you put it in the fridge as it solidifies? You kind of almost get like a solidification of the oils.
What's the explanation of that? Why is it getting cloudy when it's in the fridge?
I believe that there's some sort of transformation of the volatile oils that occurs, and that it's just suspended in liquid in a way that's creating a little bit more solids, like you're actually seeing visual solids. I think that's the theory. But when I chill this, that does not happen. There's this incredible clarity to the liquid, and you also get a very different flavor. Like when I put hot water in, right away you wouldn't really taste this, but if you let it sit for a bit, you do get a little bit more acid, which is really important. You know how we were talking about like when things are unbalanced, they can get unpleasant. What can happen is you can actually have some people feel that cold brew is really hollow because it doesn't have any acid. It's just all fruit and floral. So the idea here is, and let's taste it.
So it's changing the sort of character
of the tea,
signature of the taste.
Well, I think that as brewers of tea, whenever we're making tea, we're actually curating flavor compounds. There's a reason why we brew green tea, like delicate green teas, at a lower temperature. It's because those acidic, bitter, really unpleasant, like unbalanced flavor dynamics exist within the tea that we're brewing. And if we just threw boiling water on it and put tons of tea, we would bring out a lot of unpleasant flavors. But if we use a less tea or like a careful amount of tea, a good ratio of tea to water, and we're careful with our brewing temperature, we actually are curating flavor molecules that taste more enjoyable to our palates. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So what we're doing here is we're actually making a decision if we want to go cold or hot. We're going to bring out, these are both, in my opinion, very pleasant flavor experiences, but they're very different from one another, which is kind of cool too.
Yeah, that's something I wouldn't have thought of. I'm enjoying the cold.
It's good, hey? Very
well. Yeah, I mean, it's obviously you getting different options for whether if it's a cold day outside, have the hot stuff, and if it's a super hot day like yesterday on my patio, it was like I could barely stand on it because it was so hot out there, and that's just like perfect for a cold beverage.
And you can actually cut this instead of cutting it with cold water, you can actually cut it with with soda water, with sparkling water, and you can make like a sparkling tea. And what's really awesome about that is when you make a tea hot, you do release more bitters and acid. And I find that when I go and I say like brew it really strong and hot, and I pour that over sparkling water often has, because CO2 is an acid, you're gonna highlight the acidity, and it can be actually somewhat unpleasant. But if you brew it cold like this and then you pour it over sparkling water, you get this really nice experience with it. Yeah.
I just have a quick question.
Sure.
What would happen if I drank all of this? This has a lot of kick in it altogether?
Well, 40 grams, right? So 40 grams of tea. It's a very long infusion. Caffeine likes to come out through sort of length of contact time. If you do really short contact times, you're going to have less caffeine kind of idea. But you get to a saturation point somewhat. But you're definitely surpassing it. This is probably the most caffeinated way you could make your tea. So
that's quite a lot then.
Yeah, I wouldn't drink. Well, you could put it this way. It's like we use 5 grams of tea in like a little teapot that's about 4 ounces in size. That's how we make it Gong Fu Cha style. For our wholesale customers, though, if you look at the tea tin, on the cover of the tea tin, it says 6 grams, 180 mils. You know, you would weigh that out on a scale, and then you would put the 6 grams into a teapot. You would add your 180 grams or mils, it's the same thing, of water. It says the temperature that it's going for is 90 degrees. So there's a little bit of a process to get that. The easiest is to just have a temperature variable kettle, and it'll give you your the temperature that you need. The other option is you can use a vessel transfer system where boiling water is 100, and every time you put it into a room temperature vessel, it's going to cool 10 degrees centigrade.
Wow.
So
now if I put this in the refrigerator overnight, should this still be just as good tomorrow, pretty much?
We find that it tastes great. For about the food safe answer is 3 days in the fridge if you're using carefully washed and cleaned, and hopefully you spray in some alcohol and clean it. That's the food safe answer. 3 days if you're really careful.
I'll finish it tomorrow then. I won't finish this all today.
the practical response is that, like, this is just for me, and I'm not going to say this is advice for everybody. This is just like, here's me putting that out there so there's no liability. But I take it to 2 weeks. That's my kind of line in the sand. And I put it in the fridge I put a piece of tape on it, and I write the date that I brewed it, or like I finished the extraction, and then I take it from there. Should make you about 12 cups. So you can have 1 a day or 2 a day, and you should be in a good place. You've already made 2 of them, so you only have 10 left. And if you make bigger cups, of course you'll have less. So think in your head, this is a 25% concentrate. So if you wanted to do 12 ounces, then you just divide it by 4, and that's how much concentrate you would use, and you pull it up to 12. Does that make sense?
Okay, so now is that what I see in this jar?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what this is?
That's what that is. That's 40 grams. It expands.
So they just expand a lot.
A lot, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Isn't that kind of crazy?
That is crazy.
Yeah. So the leaves are gonna absorb. I like to measure the leaf absorption, and I actually put in 850 grams. But when I drain it out, there's only 750 grams that comes out, even when I'm fairly careful. So there's a good 100 grams of total absorption in those leaves. That are not going anywhere. It's part of the rehydration process.
You can tell how much of a novice I am at this.
Yeah, this is great. I like to have these this kind of dialogue.
Yeah,
it's good time.
Well, it's important for all the people that maybe just don't. We always go towards convenience, right? So
this is sort of like, it's an interesting, because it straddles both worlds. You do have to put in the preparation. It does highlight flaws in your tea if it doesn't taste that good. So if you're getting fairly decent tea, you're going to really taste that beautiful tea. It's also, because you've done the prep work in advance, you drain it, you could do 2 of these if you're drinking a lot of tea. You do 80 grams worth, right? Some people like to skip the dilution process altogether, and so they just put in that 1 liter jar, instead of putting 40 grams in, they put in 10 grams. And then when they strain it, it's ready to drink. They don't need to think about concentrates and cutting it or anything. I like the concentrate.
So how many grams were put into this again? Sorry?
40 grams in a 1 liter mason jar.
Okay.
And if you're gonna weigh it out, the water, it's 850 mils. But if you just fill a mason jar, that's basically what you're getting. People think they're getting a 1 liter mason jar. That means 1 liter will fit. It's 1 liter if it was nothing in it and it was completely level to the top. But that's not the reality. Right?
Okay. So. I wanted to try the sparkling water combination really quick. Just to be crazy.
Sure. Let's do it. I got some sparkling water here too.
Okay, I'll be right back.
Okay. Let's make it happen. So some sparkling water. I'll put my pu'er off to the side. And I think we're good to go.
My sparkling water also has a little bit of lime in it.
Ooh, okay, that's gonna be fun. You know.
So
you
that's
could also
change things.
We can do honey, simple syrup as well, and you can add to it, make it like a honey oolong kind of thing, which is kind of fun.
I'm just going to put a little bit of sparkling water into it, not too much.
I'm as a general rule of thumb, I treat it like a 25% concentrate, but honestly, you're right. You can do whatever you want for that.
Yeah,
so.
I just basically doubled what I have here, so.
It's just going to strengthen the flavor of the tea, which is not it can get unpleasantly strong if you're not careful, but yeah.
Well, do you like this jar band?
It works, hey? It's meant for obviously with the hot water, so you can actually brew in there. James Guacamole would like to let us know that his sparkling water has alcohol in it, says the chat room. So yeah. So cheers.
Cheers to that.
Yeah, we're going.
How does that work now? What's the scientific explanation as to what happens with alcohol
and tea?
When you were to mix tea, is that recommended? Is that a?
There's a conversation about how alcohol is an excellent solvent, so you're able to pull out oils and redistribute them into the water. I think that there's a good argument to be made for it.
It depends on what time zone you're in too. I mean, it's true. It's after 5 in Ontario.
Right. And the other thing is that I believe that if you're going to put it in, it's nice if it's a little bit if it's unflavored. So he says it's the Long Island iced tea. So James, I'd like to say that try and give it a go with something unflavored, so that you can really, if you're going to do it this way, you can kind of remake the Long Island iced tea with some JagaSilk, throw in some
Keeping in mind, he obviously doesn't have any of this.
He could totally hook himself up. Free shipping across Canada, jagasilk.com. This is the Huang Jin Gui. So if you're watching and you wanna grab yourself some tea, you can totally do that. Not a whole lot of this left. This is we're moving into the 2021 harvested teas. It's been happening February, March, April. Now the Japanese teas are coming. It's a really exciting time. We're choosing our teas for the year. We're cupping lots of teas. We actually drink hundreds of teas, and we choose 6 for the wholesale. And we're going to expand a little bit on our reserve teas. So if you go into the reserve teas this year, there's going to be some exciting new additions there. But anyways,
so you have sorry, I was
go ahead.
You have a farmer in Japan who you get all of your tea direct from.
Multiple farmers in Japan
farmers.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And we also buy this particular tea. Is from a farm in Anhui, which is in China. A farmer named Mr. Wang. What he's done is something kind of interesting. You know how with apples, there's like Gala and Red Delicious and Granny Smith, etc., and how they're all apples, but the cultivar or the cultivated variety has such a huge impact on the end flavor. The same is true for tea. Yabukita, Okumidori, Tsuhikari are Japanese cultivars. Bannockburn and say Ambari are Indian cultivars. And in Taiwan, they developed a cultivar called Qingxin. And the Qingxin cultivar is really used extensively in the country. But oolongs were actually invented, that process of creating, Camellia sinensis, which is the tea plant. It can go into green teas, crimson teas, black teas, white teas. Like, it all comes from the same plant. But there's also tons of different varieties of that plant, just like there is in wine grapes, right? And this Qingxin cultivar was developed in Taiwan, and what Mr. Wang has done is he's reverse imported it into Anhui, which is the birthplace of oolongs. And so he's taking a cultivar that was developed outside of the birthplace of the oolong, and then growing oolongs using that cultivar. It's kind of interesting. The plants are only about 8 years old. Normally you start to taste really good flavors after you've been growing them for about 15 years. That's when you start to really taste interesting and complex flavors. But yeah, with this one, we're in a situation with where it's tasting great 8-9 years in. I think we're on year number 9 right now. So yeah, okay. The Huang Jin Gui.
I have a friend in Taiwan. I was going to get him to come onto the show, but it was like 4 a.m. there. So
no. Well then. You'll just have to tell them where they can find the show, and they can maybe they can give you your 2 cents on whether or not the information we're offering is accurate. But hopefully it is. But yeah, Steve, we've reached the end of the show. We're already an hour in, and I know that was the time that I was asking from you. I know you're a busy guy. You got painting to do. Do you have any final words or questions or thoughts before we close off the show?
I think I have quite a few final words and questions. I just have to narrow it down.
Sure.
To something here. I want to help to promote your business.
Okay. Thank you.
And as I attempted to do with my Instagram story, what is one thing that I could say to people? What I'm saying that, you know, you can get your matcha from JagaSilk rather than from wherever people might get their matcha from around here, or
you know, that's an interesting question.
Canada or US.
I think that
what's the elevator pitch, I guess,
for what we do. So I'm always like, we kind of take this philosophy of you know, we're in this with all these other people that are doing, you know, there's other importers. I have friends in the industry that are just fantastic people. I would say that it's interesting to try from many different vendors, and I think
but you want to crush them.
what makes, I think, the matcha that you would get from us different and special is definitely that it's from micro lots. And the norm in Japan is farmers sell to co-ops, sell to tea companies. Tea companies blend, finish fire, and sell under a poetic name. And when you buy matcha, even if it's direct from Japan, it is that creation of the tea company. And so what we're doing is we're skipping the co-op and the tea company. We're buying direct. So you could say it's farmer direct, single estate. And what's really cool is we buy the tencha for our matcha and we mill it on this grinder behind me. And as far as I know, we're the only ones in the world that mill at the tea bar level. We have a friend in Vancouver. He owns O5 Tea, and we bought a mill and he bought a mill. So he is milling beautiful tencha in Vancouver. And I encourage people to check out his selections. We actually do hopper swaps. I'll sometimes bring in some of his tencha, and he'll bring some of mine over there, and we sell each other's matcha that we milled. So we milled his, and he milled ours kind of scenario, which is kind of fun.
Yeah, I see on Instagram sometimes you post these photos or these little videos of what you're doing with the microns, like you're measuring the tea on some sort of a little metal scale.
The granular gauge. Yeah. So
is that a common thing? I mean, is that what everyone is doing out there? That's
actually really special too. So most people aren't milling their own matcha. That's normally done at the factory level. So this is the other part of the elevator pitch. So single estate and milled in Victoria, right? And we are also, this gives us the chance to be super careful. So we actually confirm, and this is many of the relationships that we were buying from, they were milling the matcha themselves or they were getting it milled for them. But I didn't have a confirmation of consistency in terms of the grain size of the matcha after it was milled. And to qualify as a matcha, it needs to be less than 10 microns. And 1 micron is 1/1000th of a millimeter. So you got to be at that 10 micron or less. And this lets me really confirm that somewhere, that I'm like, okay, I am getting a very fine tencha. Okay.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Yeah, I can taste the microns.
Yeah, it's really thin. Now you're not drinking matcha right now though. So that's great though.
Yeah.
What you're drinking
I'm sure there are microns. There are a way to measure this.
There is, yeah. Yeah, but it's more like
down sections.
So there's like 3 kinds of they talk about, you know how in like the art world there's like I don't know, there's different historical moments, and in music they talk about classical, Renaissance music.
Eras.
Eras. So in tea they talk about like the boiled tea era, which precedes the whipped tea era, which precedes the steeped tea era, and we're in the steeped tea era. So what you're drinking is a steeped tea. Matcha is from the era that precedes it. It's from the whipped tea. Yeah.
I just love that word combination. Tea era. So tea era. You know, like a little princess.
Oh yeah.
Tiara.
There's a pun.
Steeped tea era.
waiting to happen. Yeah. And so boiled tea is kind of the ancestor of chai. It's putting a bunch of ingredients in, making like more of a decoction where you boil it down and then maybe you add some milk. The whipped tea is when you put it. It's like, you know, like flours ground. There's always been this grinding thing. It's this idea of like grinding it and then just kind of stirring it into tea or whisking it into water. Sorry. and then drinking that. And that's what matcha is. And matcha's kind of taken that and gone into this very specialized place where it's, shade grown leaves that are like the first harvest. They've been deveined and destemmed, and at that point they're called tencha. Tencha goes into cold storage, and then when you want to mill it, you take it out of cold storage, you thaw it, and then you mill it to less than 10 microns. And if it doesn't hit those points, shade grown, deveined, destemmed, micro milled, it's not technically a matcha. So matcha is a powdered green tea, but not all powdered green tea is matcha. And then what you're drinking right now is from the next era of tea, which is the steeped tea era, and it's more of an extraction. So rather than mixing it in the powder and drinking the whole leaf, like essentially eating the tea leaves, what you're doing right now is it's like you're drinking an extraction.
Yeah.
Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I wouldn't consider myself to be an expert in matcha, but I know Ingrid has consumed matcha for a long time.
Right.
10 or 15 years, and she definitely notices the difference with other matchas versus JagaSilk.
Awesome. And for our viewers, again, Ingrid is the owner of Snafu, and she brings the matcha to the residents over at Steve's. And yeah, no, that's awesome. That's good to hear that we have a vote of confidence from her, because you were saying she drinks a lot of matcha, and she's part of our subscriptions. So
I think long term it's for me too as well, because I mean, I, like many other people, drink coffee, and that's fine. I don't know the quality of the coffee or what I'm doing there, but I think for long term health, matcha is also, it's better, right? Green tea is better for the body than
coffee.
Coffee.
I like to speak more like from personal, because food science is always changing. So to try and say that this is better than this, margarine is better than butter, is better than margarine, like coffee is better than tea, is better than coffee. I find for me, the caffeinated response that I personally get from coffee is a lot more intense than, and my understanding is its delivery into your bloodstream is a lot faster than with green tea. And green tea has a lovely sort of dampener of coffee, or sorry, of caffeine, which is this L-theanine, and the theanine helps. It's like as an extract, people take it to go to sleep. It's more of a tranquilizer. So if you have a stimulant and a tranquilizer together, it helps to slow down the release of the stimulant. And so I find personally I can drink like lots of cups of tea. I'll be affected. I'll be like awake, but I don't experience the same kind of crash or that intense delivery, and then the body compensating by kind of flipping.
Yeah, there's always that moment of regret after a few too many cups of coffee.
Right?
Like, why am I doing this? Why do I even drink this?
Yeah, you just get a little bit depressed about the whole thing. So I personally, I love coffee. From a tea worldview, coffee is an herbal tea because it's not Camellia sinensis, but you can extract flavor from it, and it's a botanical. That's essentially what qualifies as an herbal tea, is this big open world of opportunity. Not Camellia sinensis, but can be extracted with hot water and make an extraction. So anyway, so I'm into it, but I do find that, for my personal health and peace of being, if I'm drinking a lot of liquids, I try not to drink pot after pot of coffee. I find that has a negative effect on my life.
Yes.
Yeah, and I've seen, business owners who are in tea versus in coffee, and the coffee ones do age quite a lot faster than the tea ones. So, I'm actually about 300 years old, and I've been drinking tea the whole time. So
wow,
yeah.
So that's encouraging. That's why I just poured myself some more of this tea.
It makes you immortal. Yeah,
that's the secret.
There you go. Awesome. Okay, cool. So subscriptions people can check out if they want to get our matcha. Ingrid is actually on one of them, and it just gets you fresh matcha to your door. We're working actually, Steve, on a new webpage that'll be really fun. We plan on releasing tea subscriptions as well. This is an option for you when you're painting. You could make yourself some cold brew iced tea. Just throw 40 grams into a 1 liter jar like we did. Cold water.
I'm going to continue to drink this while I paint.
Amazing. And then you can also, if you want to steal some matcha from Ingrid, a really easy way to do that is you can actually put some into some cold water, like that 1/4 like we used, put it in the jar, and lid the jar, and make sure the water's cold, because you don't want to put hot water in there and close it and shake it, because it'll explode. But shake it with the cold water, and that'll actually break it up. And then you can just add hot water, and you can have a quick matcha that involves no whisk or bowl or anything. If you want to get into the culture of it, which is it's an awesome opportunity. You know, like when you're painting, you probably need to take a moment where you're just not painting so that you don't go absolutely crazy. I think actually, if I were you, I'd have like a little setup like this, where I have a little tiny teapot, I would have a little decanter, I'd have a little tea making station, and I would just like pour my boiling water on it, because that's Gong Fu Cha style. If you put 5 grams in the teapot, fill the teapot if it's like a 3 or 4 ounce teapot, and you just wait 15 seconds, and you pour it into your decanter, and you can just sit there, enjoy like a quick like 3 ounces of tea, go back to what you're doing, and then later you can come back and you can experience the multiple layers from the same tea. You can do that with that Huang Jin Gui. You could make little tiny. You could even use a little mason jar and just fill it with like those little tiny ones. You know those 4 ounce mason jars?
Yes.
Yeah. If you have any of those kicking around, you could use that. But mini teapots are what's going to make this work. And then you can just do multiple layers of infusions. It's a lovely way to have tea. So, yeah,
that's great.
Throwing that out there. Cool. Well, thank you for coming on the show, Steve. People can find you at stevechmilar.com. Oh yeah, we were going to check out your painting. Is this what you're working on right now?
Yes.
Amazing.
This is the Mood Collector. I wonder if I can do this.
Okay. Let's. So stevechmilar.com is where you're going to go and find Steve's work.
My apologies for the sound catastrophes. What's that, sorry?
They can find you on stevechmilar.com. Is that the best way to get a hold of you? Is just go on there and
Yep, or Instagram.
That looks beautiful.
I'm still working on it, of course. I've got a lot of tweaking to do. A lot of little. I'm going to paint a scene inside of every one of these drips as well. Like there's going to be a separate world inside each of them. So I've got 4 worlds to paint. 5. Well, maybe these little spots at the bottom too.
Wow.
5, and then there's another one down there, 6. So those will each potentially take a full day.
There's a very the surrealist painter Dali, very famous fella. You know, I was always like, oh yeah, I love the surrealism of Dali, but and I really love it. But like, what's interesting about what you're doing is like, when you first look at it, it's just painted so real. Like it feels like it's a photograph. But what's actually going on would be impossible, or maybe it could exist in another dimension. But like this idea of somebody like, you know, with drips of worlds around them, painting this like. Or like, I guess stirring. I was joking to my brewer that guy's making kombucha, just stirring the batch, you know. That's what's going on.
Giant spoon.
Yeah, giant spoon. It's happening. That's beautiful.
Yeah. It's pretty open to interpretation. I still got a lot of, lots of little things to do. And the major thing is, of course, like still the portrait is not done, and the hat, and even the jacket. I'll go back into it. I want to lighten the top of it so it fits into the circular light a little bit more, and this leg has to be done, and the foot has to be done, and this stuff has to be finished, and there's still a lot of little things, but it's at least close enough to get a pretty good idea
of where you're going with it. Yeah,
I still want to brighten up some of this a little bit too, maybe more saturated colors and some of the white and yellow, and actually bubbles. I forgot, I got to put little bubbles on the edge of the bowl.
Can you drop the camera down just a little bit? We're missing where you're pointing. Okay, yeah. Okay.
Bubbles on the edge of the bowl.
Amazing.
This part has to be dry because this is still wet. Like if I was to touch, this is just a few days old, so if I touch the center there, it would be wet.
Right.
But it has to be dry before I can really go back and paint over that area.
Wow.
And this dog is not supposed to be a real dog. It's supposed to be kind of more like a sculpture piece or something.
Oh, interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And then you were talking about like pure colors and how you just use a tiny bit of them, and then you kind of move away from them to allow for those to highlight, and that's how you get like the beautiful light up there in the top there and in the bowl.
Yeah. Well, in nature, like when we see, when you look outside in the daytime and you see all the greens and blues of the sky and in the shadow areas and all the different hues and values that are happening, usually like 99% of that is not paint directly from tube.
Wow.
Basically, like paint directly from a tube. It would almost be like eating tea right out of the package.
Right.
You know, just like it's like the strongest version you can possibly get.
Right.
So you don't want to use the strongest version you can possibly get, except in the most very, very, very special areas.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, it's needed. So
you're working with concentrates. There's our parallels again. That's awesome.
That's right. So, for example, this like the center of this light is the lightest. Like that's titanium white straight from the tube, which I may yellow just very, very slightly yet, but you know, for example, that area right there is it's only special because the rest of the painting is not as bright as that.
Yeah.
Right. So that's one of those carefully measured things that has to be the value measurement of this area, for example, has to be just exactly what it is to fit within the entire composition in the way that it does.
And you make it all logical in how it affects the bodies and the trees, etc.
Oh yeah, it has to fit together. I use a 20-degree value scale rather than a 10-degree value scale, which is, you can't buy this at the art store.
Okay.
For example, you can only get 10-degree value scales at the art store, and they just give people an idea roughly of how dark or light their mix is.
Wow.
But I'll measure, for example, I might have something from my reference image, and I'll look at one area. Sometimes like the sky areas or these large areas which appear to be relatively flat color, I will make sure, like for example, that I want, you know, this area up here, I really want it to be a very particular value. So when I'm mixing my paint, I will measure it to this, and sometimes I'll, instead of just going for 5.5 or 5 or 4.5 on the value scale, I might write down something like 4.6 or 4.7.
Oh, interesting.
So I'm kind of going, actually at that point it's a 100-degree value scale, because I'm you know, really particular about whether or not it is, you know, between 5.5 and 5.
Wow.
Or if it's almost 5, but I can't write that, so I have to write 4.9, you know, that kind of thing.
That's really interesting.
So it just allows me, like, this is all from experience too, of wasting time in the past. I have to make sure that this area, for example, is exactly the right value, so I don't have to go back and adjust it and repaint it.
That's super fascinating. You know, when we're doing our milling, of course we use that grain gauge, and it just reminded me of that immediately. And just how we keep data is we actually have a Google sheet going, and we keep track of what the values were for particular teas as we go back in history. Do you have like good bookkeeping, and you're looking at like how, or record keeping I should say, so you can see the values you used in different skies and have kind of like a map of the painting, and you can actually go back to that and see what you were doing? Or is this like it's one project, it stays within that, and you don't really reference previous works? Or
good coincidental word choice, because I do have a map. I call it a color map for each image that I make. So like the reference images, I will use another like Photoshop file, and so I'll have all the value measurements inside of that.
Amazing.
And so I'll have all those little 4.7, or, you know, and that's actually one of the reasons to use specific numbers too, because if I just use 4 or 5 or 6, I would have a lot of the same number all over the painting, and it might not be that, right? So I need to know that the 4.7 is that part of the sky, and the 4.6 is the part of the face, or something like that.
Yeah, totally. Oh, that's so fascinating. Huh. You know, I find that it's so interesting too, just how random that is. Like, what is 4.6? It's such a random thing. I find that just with the concept of centimeters and time and all that stuff, just how random it is. But the more you do a project like this, or the more that, say, we mill, and very soon we'll be getting into making, say, like roast curves and analyzing, you know, as we roast our tea on our new tea roaster, we're going to get more and more data. And the more data you have, it feels like you're building a history that you can then look at and you can reference. And I mean, you don't want to be locked into it. You want to be able to be creative and try new things and understand that there's just lots of variables. And I love the concept of Sawak. It's Atlio, one of the hereditary chiefs and a PhD from the New Chutnulth on Western Vancouver Island, wrote an amazing book called Tawak, and it talks about all is one and one is all. You remove something from its context to understand it, but to truly understand it, you have to put it back again. So you take the data, you apply it. You take the data, you apply it, and it just helps so much with your micro macro experience with reality. But in our relationship with the craft, it's just such a fascinating thing to be able to, just like build these tools and then understand that they were built by you and not to be trapped by them. And it's just it's an interesting, that's so cool. I've never seen I'm sure for artists it's probably a very normal thing that you have there, except that you've taken it to a kind of an extreme, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of different processes out there. I think because of technology, it's changed processes as well. Like ever since from the birth of photography, it changed painters, going back into, I think it was 1860 something was the first camera, the first photograph. And so, in the late 1800s, that was already really changing the way that painters wanted to work. And they just a lot of them felt like it was pointless to try to do what, if you can just take a photo of something. But I mean, of course, the quality of photographs and printing was so limited at that time.
Right.
So coming up into the 1900s, that's when it really, really started to change painters, and up to the era of printing and being able to make prints on paper. People were just like, okay, there's absolutely no point at this time to paint.
Interesting.
In a realistic way, because photographs can just do what all the old history painters are trying to do, which was to capture moments in history and things like that. And it's like, well, a photo can just do that so much more accurately, so much quicker. And so that's one of the things that pushed people away from painting. But I don't think that the story is over, right? And a lot of people don't think that, right? We all feel like there's still so many more dimensions that you can go with in terms of what makes a painting special.
You almost just need to do like that much more, or highlight the fact that it's that particular medium that you're using, right? Don't try and make it look like a photograph. You could probably make it.
That is one of the that's one of the hang-ups. And one of the reasons that a lot of people will still work in representational content matter, but make it very obvious that it's a painting. So, for example, there's a lot of realistic painting styles that look photographically real from a distance, but as soon as you see a detail cropped image, or if you see that same painting in person and you walk right up to it, it's extremely obvious that it's a painting. You see all the big brush marks and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, that's interesting too, isn't it?
So that's one of the reasons that decision has been made as well. It's kind of the same thing with my work. It's just that it's on a much smaller scale. So in order to see all the little obvious brush marks, you just have to go a lot closer. So it makes a person observe it from up close and from a distance, where you can only see the general narrative.
Kind of reminds me of if we bring it back to tea at the end here, is just the creation of say sencha, or maybe our greens, oolongs even that we're drinking right now, and using machines to do it, and machines to harvest, and machines to roll, and machines to process. It's I think there was a point where people were like, I'll never have to do any of that by hand ever again. But now when we really look at it, when you get really like into your tea, you start to really appreciate the fact that there are still people that harvest by hand, because of so much more care can go into it, or the fact that you roll by hand, and just the amount of generations of learning that goes into doing that properly, and to finish by hand, and knowing just how important that manual intervention is in the end piece, and just how much of a higher quality product. It takes way more time, and maybe this is a great way to loop back to the beginning and end here, is just that it takes more time, and maybe there's ways to get something that's close for way less time, but when you really dig deep, it's not actually that close at all. It's almost like a completely different medium, right? It is, and in this case it literally is painting versus photography. But I think this can also be said with your machine-produced big batch teas versus your carefully produced handcrafted teas. It's an interesting, because they're not. They could be both a sencha or both a rock oolong or something, but they're not the same thing. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, there's so many parallels with the senses, the visual and the audio and the taste. There's
cool. Okay. Thank you, Steve. I feel like, and I know that we do this. We can talk and keep going probably until later on tonight. The tea will keep us talking too, because it's got that the nice focusing power that it does, and all that lovely stuff. But we'll let you get back to your painting. Thank you so much for making the time to come on the show.
Thank you.
I know.
Thank you for this incredible tea.
Huge appreciation. I wish you the best with the painting. It looks amazing. Those watching, again, stevechmilar.com. Go to @SteveChmilar for checking them out on Instagram. And look forward to playing some more music with you, my friend, and seeing more of your artistic works and all of that good stuff.
All right, thanks, Jared.
Okay, take care. Goodbye. Okay, so that was Steve Chmilar joining us from here in Victoria. Really enjoyed having him on the show. You just, like I was saying, go check him out, stevechmilar.com. If you're watching this, this is an archive version of the show, or even if it's live. If you look at the bottom there's a little notification symbol. You can click that, subscribe first, click the notification symbol, and then when we go live, you'll know. Next week, Thursday, 1 o'clock, same time, we'll be going live again. And it's every Thursday. We're on our 57th week. We always have an interesting guest on, or almost always have an interesting guest on, drink a nice tea together, discuss the world, philosophy, tea. It's all good times. This is like a great opportunity, I found anyways, during the pandemic, and I hope to continue it past it, but to really connect with people and have a little bit more of a focused time to drink tea and discuss life. So appreciate all of you for tuning in. I hope you have a wonderful day. You can catch us on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and we'll just continue to try our best to keep these broadcasts going, and appreciate your support. JagaSilk.com is where you can go to buy some tea and keep the project going. We could literally could not do this without you. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.